I'd like everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and to remain standing and remember all those in harm's way across the world, and in particularly for all the tragedies that have been occurring around the country and especially in Orange County. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for attending the Village of Woodbury Planning Board meeting of November 15, 2017. To my right, we have Robert Anzalone. To my left, I graciously get to keep Sandra Capriglione as a planning board member. Chris Chabelli, Gail Nogel, our secretary. All the way at the far table, we have Dennis Lindsay, our engineer, Stu Turner, our planner, Kelly Norton, our attorney, and Mike Musso with our telecommunications consultant. And I'm Maria Hunter, your chairperson. Board members, have you had a chance to read the minutes from November 1st? And if so, do I have a motion to accept?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. First item on the agenda is Woodbury Diner. Review ARB application submitted for proposed exterior modifications to existing diner. Said property is located at 220 Route 32 in Central Valley and is known in the Village of Woodbury tax maps as Section 229, Block 1, Lot 27. Mr. Spissu, can you come up to the microphone? Let the board know what we have going, please. And make sure the green light is on.
Good evening.
The microphone on? Is the microphone on? You need to use the microphone. Green button?
Green on?
No, yep, and
We
you're gonna have
good?
to keep it close to your, yes, please.
All right. I believe you'd like to see a rendering?
If you can please put it up there, or do, yes.
I also brought a small one that the board could look at personally on the table.
Too cheap, you couldn't make 5 copies?
All right, if you can tell us what we have going here, please.
Yes, we have a fairly large exterior renovation of the building. Most of the building will be changed, roof lines changed, windows, doors. The entire appearance of the diner would be updated quite a bit, lighting, roofing, so on. Most of what's here now is a stucco building, roofing, stucco accents, bright awnings, accent the actual building itself over windows, and a stone base, which helps keep this building within the look of the neighborhood, which is the building itself's got some colonial feel to it. The stone base reflects the many walls in this county, in this town, and provides a strong base to a building. Any questions, please?
Do you have color samples?
Yes.
You need to see the samples, please? That was the next one I found for you. Okay, so, let me just, okay. All right, so for the roof, we have the Owens Corning or equal duration asphalt singles. We have Brownwood, which is this one up here. You okay with that? Chris?
Yes.
Sandy? For the exterior wall, we have, it says STO or equal, it's stucco and is moonlight sand, which is this one.
Yeah, the large sample is the main body of the actual color work for the stucco. There's a smaller stucco sample of darker, which is the trim.
The accent, which is natural?
Yes,
All right, we need to get that. Kelly, you need that on the ARB application, right? The accent colors?
yeah, they're all on
All right,
here.
so Rich, you'll have to revise.
I'm reading them, yeah.
All right, you'll have, because it's not in the copy I have.
Which one?
The ARB application, I don't have, you have to put on here, which is not gonna hold you up, but I need you
All
to
right.
add the stucco, the accent colors on here.
I have it there on the trim. It says stow or equal terracotta,
You have moonlight sand.
down below though.
Where? On the trim, okay. It says mocha cream, this one says natural swirl. What's the-
Okay, I did cross it out. Yeah, I've got a crossed out copy myself right here, so it's actually going to be terracotta.
Is this, you gotta come over, because you have a different, it says accent stucco, it says natural swirl. That's what's throwing me off, it says natural swirl, what is the color going to be?
This is just a sample of the color itself, but cross that out with a pen because it is not.
So what's the name of it going to be?
It's going to be terracotta,
Terracotta, not mocha cream?
right?
All right,
It's hard finding the actual
that's okay.
sample
And then we have,
representation.
the lower stone is gonna be cultured stone or equal, country ledge stone shale color,
Yes.
all right? And the awnings, you're doing red?
Yeah, we want to get a nice, strong red. The owner would like that too.
All right,
Just,
you need,
small accents.
all right, you need to update this paper to put the awnings with the red, so the building department is aware of the color.
Okay.
And the metal trim is, where's the metal trim going?
The metal trim is along the top of the, there's a small parapet here in
Okay.
certain areas, so this just needs a metal cap. It'll have a very small,
All right.
Oh.
That's it. You're okay with those
These are-
colors?
Yes.
All right,
it's an actual capping for
Okay.
weather, so it has to have a color.
all right. Chris, you're okay with the colors?
Yes.
Sandy? All right, so, Chris, on the ARB application, I just need you to do a revised one to state terracotta for the trim, add the awnings color and the metal trim, just so that it's all set with the building department, so they understand what the colors are. Okay?
Maria, can you please repeat what color it was for the metal trim?
The metal trim is saying Sedona red / lighthouse red. And the awnings, there's no name to it, it's just
Yeah, there is no name.
red.
It's a red fabric, yeah, actually a vinyl.
Vinyl?
Yeah,
All right, so it's, the awnings are gonna be vinyl red.
yes,
So you'll update this application so that we have it for the next time we're back at the board, right?
okay, good.
Thank you. All right, so that's there. Is this for us to keep for the file?
Yes, you can keep
All
that.
right, so I'll give that to Gail, all right? Okay, now that we got that all straightened out, and I see, should we go right up into Dennis, go our usual way? All right, Dennis, I'm gonna have you, now that I got the colors straightened out.
Okay, the only things that we have, this is an ARB, fully within the discretion of the board. One or two things. The site plan, we just want to confirm, are there any changes to the site plan?
None.
Okay. The only thing I saw in a possible change, it's really not a change to the site plan, but they're putting a new ramp up the side. Just want to make sure,
We're taking an existing handicap ramp on the left side of the building.
Use the microphone, please, so the,
We're taking an existing ramp on the left side of the building, removing that, and putting a new exit on that side, and stairs going down to grade, and we're creating a new handicap ramp on the right side of the building, within the confines of a sidewalk that's already there.
okay, well, that's what I needed to know. Within the confines of the sidewalk that you have, if that's where the ramp is, it won't have any effect on the parking or
No.
on the travel way or anything like that? So,
none at all.
So you're holding the curb limits?
Exactly.
Okay. I don't think that would move into the level of a site plan review. I'll defer to council. Okay. So it wouldn't have any impact on the parking, on the travel. It's just a matter of egress through what was a walkway, now will be a ramp, so,
Exactly.
from what I can tell. There is no information on signage other than a location where obviously a sign would go in the front. I don't know if that's a change from what's there now. I mean, I don't know, it's a new name or what's going to happen
quite
there with the
frankly,
size of it and that sort of thing.
The owner and myself, the owners and myself have not discussed that yet. I don't believe we're gonna be putting signage on the front. That is really more of a decorative panel showing up there. I think the signage would be exactly where it is now, except I don't think it'll be bright yellow. So it'll be an improvement.
Okay, under a typical review for a site plan, when a site plan is considered by the board, the signage then is reviewed by the planning board.
But this is not site plan.
This is not a site plan.
Okay.
So this one's on the fence there. This can go to the building inspector for a
Okay.
permit and approval, all right? If the board thinks that it has any impact on the ARB review and you wish to know some information about the color in terms of the ARB review, I think you'd be within your authority to ask for that kind of information. For example, size, color, those sorts of things, or a range of colors, if you will. Maybe you don't want bright yellow and you don't want to provide bright yellow, then you can agree on that.
Well,
So,
they would have to follow our code with the colors. No more than 3 colors,
okay.
right?
Is there any particular preference
There are
you have
some
for colors?
requirements, but they're not that limiting, just so you know, so, okay.
I'm just, because the colors in the code state that you can't have more than 3 colors on a sign.
Mm-hmm.
That, I know that, because I was on that sign issue
Okay.
way back when. You're stating that it's the same size, the same sign, which, and if the board, if Gary, if it says the same sign, it's going to be internally lit like it is currently,
Yes.
and you're saying you're removing that yellow color,
That's the plan at this point. I just have no
Okay.
idea what they want to put up there
Okay.
yet, but it would be within the boxes that's there and lit the same way, so.
okay. I'm sure when we have a public hearing, you'll let us know,
Okay.
so, a range of colors, so we don't, and then we can actually, Kelly, then we can
Anything-
add that in
anything
there.
Anything that the town board prefers?
Village board?
Village board,
planning
pardon me.
board? Well, I like the color scheme that you got going here, so I would presume the sign would probably represent what you have going with the building,
Okay,
somewhat?
yep.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
I mean, you're not gonna do a yellow or a purple, you're gonna keep it within,
I don't know, I think it's up to the applicant.
it
not
is up
us.
to the applicant, but it's the color-wise, but, you
Even
know,
color-wise.
well, they can tell us what they plan on doing. As long as it's not that bright yellow, we should be good. Anything else,
The only other thing is there is a public hearing, so
Right.
you'll have to schedule that, and they'll need to bring all the materials and the color charts and all of that back. And you'll need to have the revised color chart into the board in sufficient time so that it's on the file on the website for the public to observe. The last thing is lighting. The lighting looks good, what they have on the building there, I think with the gooseneck fixtures on the front, the accent lighting. You're not changing any other lighting on the site, it's just on the building?
Just on the building. And most
Okay.
of that light will be directed downward to pretty much light the footpaths and ramps and the building itself. But there won't be any spread because.
That's fine. We don't have any data on the lights, but they look appropriate for the type of accent lighting they're trying to provide in the building. The only thing I would recommend is you put your typical standard in there, that there's no off-site glare, and it's limited to 0.1 foot candles at the property line. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
perfect. Stu, I know there's no report, and there's nothing.
No,
Yeah, we're good?
we didn't have a report.
Okay.
And we had looked at this originally, concerned about whether there were any changes in the plan and the site itself. Apparently not. Looked at the site. So it's strictly an ARB, and as Dennis says, when you're ready, you can schedule a public hearing. You need to schedule a public hearing.
Yep. All right, thank you. Kelly?
So this is a type 2 action under SECRA, but under GML, there is no referral that's required. The only thing I'll say is that just hearing the movement of the exit and the ramp, that is something that we'll take a look at, make sure that doesn't bring it into another level of review. If it does, you can always set the public hearing on this if that's what you're doing, and we can make sure that the notice is accurately noticed for that.
Okay. The switch with the ramp from the north to the south. You spoke with the building inspector about it? He's aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. Because he's away right now, okay. All right, anything else, Kelly?
Nope.
Robert?
Good for now.
Sandy? Chris?
Good.
I'm good, all right. So I'm gonna offer a motion to declare, type this as a type 2 action. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Type 2, just give me a second while I write this all down. The next meeting is December 6th. We can have a public hearing, and we can authorize the attorney to draft a resolution of approval. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Yeah. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we'll see you on December 6th, and we'll have, this should be sufficient for the samples, Dennis? This should be sufficient for the samples, right?
It's up to you, if that provides sufficient information for you.
We're good with this?
It's good.
Sandy, we're good with this for the public?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. All right, so you can take this home with you.
Okay?
We'll see you on the 6th, but if you could, between now and Friday, just send a revised ARB application, adding on the awning, the trim, and changing the name for the accent stucco.
Good, thank you.
All right, and you can take that picture, and I'll give this picture to Gail, please, if you could pass that down. Thank
Could I
you.
make a recommendation?
do you-
Richard, you may want to have a bigger, seriously, a bigger photo for the public.
Or a smaller easel.
Oh, yeah, smaller easel.
I'll work on it, Chris.
Thank you. Okay, next item is Dunderberg Ventures. The applicant can come up to the podium, and just state your name for the record, please.
Is the mic working? Is that, am I on the mic?
Yep, you're
Yeah,
on.
Great. My name is Ann Cudignola. I work for Tim Miller Associates, and I'm here representing the Dunderberg Ventures applicant. The Dunderberg Ventures site is located between Integer Road and Route 6 and 17. The applicant has owned his property for more than 20 years. Even the designation of the road names in this area has changed during that time. What was Dunderberg Road is now known as Nininger. 20 years ago, Harriman Commons did not exist. Home Depot was not built. Walmart was not a local place. The average annual daily traffic traveling along US Route 6 was 36,000 cars in 1988. It grew to 46.8 in 1996. And the most recent counts indicate an AADT of 64,300, and those counts were even in 2012. As has been previously addressed before the Village Board, the site, which is currently zoned R2 acres, does not really meet the zoning's purpose as stated in your code, which is to provide a safe and suitable living environment for single-family residential use and similar compatible uses. The site where it's located between Integer Road and the Quickway, is in an area that is a transition between the residential area to the north of Integer Road and the highway and commercial uses that exist on the south of Route 17. I ask each member of the planning board to consider if they would choose to build their home on this strip of land.
Excuse me.
Yes?
This is, you have to tell us what the project is. Don't ask the board what we want there. You have to
okay.
tell us what the project is about.
The
because
project, that's fine.
That's what we need to have. Thank you.
Does the board have some information about this? I'm under the impression that this has been before the board before. Is that not true?
This was last before the board in 2006, where I was a sitting member. The other board members were not here, if I'm correct, in 2006. But this was before the village board to have a
Correct.
zone change.
That's right.
We're not here for a zone change.
I understand.
That zone change has been denied.
That's right.
So what we're here for is to have the application, a narrative from you, because I'm going to go to our consultants, because more than likely, this is going to be a referral, if I'm not mistaken, to the ZBA. So everything that you're going to tell us,
Which is all we're really asking for tonight,
so
just to be
that's-
clear.
yeah, so-
That's right. So that's fine. Okay.
Okay.
Well, the project is, it's a strip, it's an 8-acre strip located between Integer Road and Route 17. It's zoned residential. It's really not appropriate for residential use for a variety of reasons. Primarily, its proximity to the highway and the road. The applicant did previously submit a petition to the village board, and they were reluctant to entertain a zone change, and I actually understand that. Truthfully, in my opinion, Nininger Road, the north side of Nininger Road should really be the boundary of where the zoning, residential zoning would stop, because really, once you're past that, you're very close to the highway. There are no other residences in this area, and the only other land use in this area is the state police barracks. I know traffic is of a concern to the village in general. However, there are many tools that could mitigate traffic. Woodbury Junction has recently constructed turn lanes to facilitate movement, and there's a light being installed, or is installed, at Nininger Road and Dunderberg Road. The applicant's most recent site plan would look to utilize that same location as one of their accesses, and their second access would be limited to right turn in, right turn out. But I am getting ahead of myself. I understand the village's concern regarding a zone change and all that entails. This applicant simply wants to utilize his property. He's entitled to some use of his lands and is willing to work with the planning board to make that happen. Tonight, all we are seeking is a referral to the Zoning Board of Appeals to make our case for a use variance, which would enable us to put a use on there different than what's allowed in the 2-acre residential zoning. We would be willing to comply with the conditions that would be stipulated by the ZBA, and should we prevail, we would then be back in front of this board, and you would have ample opportunity to comment and make recommendations, and for us to conduct our environmental review. I would also like to point out that, as shown on the elevation before you, the proposed design of the buildings would be similar to residential dwellings from an aesthetic point of view. So they would be designed to blend into the local neighborhood. And all we are really asking for tonight is a chance to make our case. So we are requesting a referral to the ZBA.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Dennis?
Okay, as this board knows, you don't do zoning. You act on the zoning that's in place. This doesn't have standing before you now because it is not in compliance with your current zone, at least their plan for development. This has had a long history. There were applications before this board on 2003, 5, 6, 2007, and 2017. Very similar applications to the one that's before you right now. It's been referred to the the Village Board of Trustees. They reviewed it twice, and they're not of a mind to revise the zoning. The only other option available to this applicant would be a referral to the ZBA, so that they can consider the comments that you heard this evening, which are all related to the best and beneficial use of the property. Those arguments really are made to the Village Board of Trustees.
They are.
When they go to the ZBA, there's a different standard, and Kelly can probably tell you better than I can, but there's a standard they'll have to meet to get what they want to seek from the ZBA and to be able to come back here. We did note in our comments to you, and hopefully that we sent a copy to the applicant, in addition to the use, there are a number of things that are shown on the site plan. Now, the site plan is a sketch plan. It really isn't in detail. But there are some issues in your zoning code where we think that they may require relief. So they don't have to go back and forth between this board and the ZBA. We try to identify whatever we could in terms of what the variances might be. You have a section, parking will depend upon the use in the building and what they provide, the areas that are designated for office space. There is an unusual condition in your code where this property has 2 frontages. And if it's on a state highway and it is on the south, there's a 50-foot area that's supposed to be left open to the sky. Now, they're not trying to seek access from there, but I think we've had this determination before, and that it was required to be a 50-foot open to the sky. But that's something they should talk to the ZBA about and find out if they need relief. There's landscaping, screening, and buffering requirements. There's loading berth requirements, which I didn't see on there. And there's hedge screens also. And we cited all the references in the codes. They can take a look at those. Also, it's the responsibility of the applicant, and it'll be so stated in the referral letter, that it's up to them to seek all the relief that they require. They know better the plan that they're going to propose than we do from this sketch, and they should make sure that they have everything. We also made some comments on site plan issues, which I won't go into here. That's just for the benefit of the applicant. If they do prevail and they receive the relief that they require, and they come back here, they should take a look at those items so the site plan is complying as much as it can be before we do a review on a more detailed plan. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
I'm good for it. Stu, want to jump over to you?
Yeah, as Dennis has indicated, and as Ann has indicated, this has had a long history. There is one nuance that I think is important, just so everybody understands. The village board did not turn down the zoning. They did not want to consider the zoning, and I think that has relevance only in that there's an item later on which is a little different. So the board didn't want to consider the zoning, and that's one reason why the applicant now is in a position to have to either, they have to go for a use variance, because they've petitioned the village board twice, and the village board did not want to undertake consideration of this rezoning. And the reasons, Dennis and I both had earlier memos to the village board which laid out some of the same issues, the inconsistency with the comprehensive plan, et cetera. So you have those memos, and I think, as the applicant has said, they are asking for a referral to the ZBA. I think that's their only legitimate option, other than to petition the village board again.
Okay, thank you. Kelly? Oh, go ahead.
Stu, you just said use variance. It's use and area, right?
Oh, there may be other variances, I'm sorry,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
In other words, I mean, there's going to be a whole procedure. There's going to be, you're going to have to go through seeker. And yes, and I think Dennis said that when they make their petition, they should make sure they identify
Okay.
all of the variances they will need, but the threshold variance is the use.
Okay.
Kelly?
So just to piggyback on what Dennis was saying, they'll be asking for a use variance from the ZBA. A use variance is different from an area variance, just generally because an area variance has 5 factors that the ZBA has to balance. A use variance is 4 factors, and if you can't meet one of those elements of the test, it fails. I'm not sure how they're gonna do it here, but the elements are that the property is unique, that they can't get a reasonable return on it, that this is not self-created, and that if the variance was granted, it wouldn't alter the essential character of the neighborhood. So there's a lot that they do have to demonstrate to the ZBA again, but with this type of variance, if you miss one element, the variance can't be granted. So I just wanted to follow up on that part that Dennis mentioned.
Thank you. Chris, I'm going to start with you. Have any thoughts, concerns, questions?
No, I'm good.
Sandy?
And I don't know if you'll know this, because I'm not sure if you were with the applicant back then, but in 2006, the planning board at that time referred the applicant to the ZBA. Why didn't you go then?
I was not involved at that point. I don't know, but I think circumstances are slightly different. I guess the site plan isn't altogether different, but we would like an opportunity at this time to go forward and make our case to them and then come back to you.
Okay,
I had Maria do some research for me, and they were given a referral, and there was no application to the zoning board back then, and she checked from 2006 through to 2008.
right.
So
That's-
they were before the board.
Right.
We gave them a referral, which we have a copy of, where I have a copy from the referral from back then, because I have the old file, and they didn't proceed with it.
Okay.
So,
And just the other thing, when the applicant purchased this property 20 years ago, it was R2A, correct?
It was R2A, but the circumstances around the property have changed significantly. The flyover was not built at that point. Yes, it was zoned R2A at that point.
But the property itself has not diminished, and
Well, it has diminished by there was a taking when they built the flyover, so there is.
how much was taken?
How much was taken, gentlemen? I can identify that for you, I don't know off the top of my head. but I can make sure that's part of our ZBA submission, and I'm happy to get you that
Okay,
information.
thank you.
You know, all the applicant is really looking for at this point is an opportunity to try to make some use of his property. It is a transitional piece, and I think a variance is the most appropriate thing because it will look at the factors that are unique to this site.
Okay, thanks.
Robert?
Next logical step is ZBA.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, Sandy, I'm not sure what year the flyover was built.
Yeah,
I don't remember, but the tax records show that the properties were purchased in 1999, so that's 18 years, so I'm not sure
Yeah.
when the flyover came over.
I just wanted to see how much this
Yeah. All right, so at this point, board members, are we all in agreement that we can do a referral to the ZBA and have Dennis take care of that paperwork?
Yes.
Yes.
Kelly, do I have to have a motion to make it official? Okay. I'll offer a motion that we authorize our engineer Dennis Lindsay to prepare the necessary paperwork to ZBA to let them know that we're referring this over to them. And as the applicant, you have to follow up and
I'll
do
take
what you
care of
need to
that.
do as
Yep.
well, okay? Do I have a second?
I second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Just as a matter of, I never received a copy of the engineer's memo. Is it possible that I could get a copy? Sounds like it's something.
Kelly, thank you, Kelly. That's both engineer reports, right?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Yeah. Say it again.
And just for the record, the applicant, we did submit to the Orange County Department of Planning and the Orange County DPW on October 30th for the GML review. All right, so ZBA referral. Next item on the agenda is mobility. Review and discuss application submitted for the proposed placement of small cell site attached to existing utility pole located at Turner Road and Corporate Drive in Central Valley. The utility pole is located adjacent to the property known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as Section 226, Block 1, Lot 88. Please identify yourself for the record and give us a brief overview of what the proposal is, please.
Good evening, my name is Paul Costa, I'm from
Do you have the
Mobility.
microphone on? If
Yeah.
you have to, just hold it up so it's closer to you, please.
Sure, better?
Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah, great. My name is Paul Costa, I am with Mobility. We are proposing the small cell attachment on the pole on Turner Road on the corner of Corporate Drive and Turner Road. The site is already an existing 45-foot wooden utility pole owned by Orange Rockland, and our equipment would be attached to the pole. It would consist of an antenna on top, which would extend the pole to 48 feet and 4 inches. And all the equipment would be contained within a cabinet or shroud, which would be brown. And inside would be the equipment that would be used to transmit the data. Below that would be an AC cutoff, as well as a Orange and Rockland meter. And these are the specs that Orange and Rockland requires us to meet. And the facility has a coverage area of about 0.02 square miles and covering kind of the parking lot of the commons there, as well as the residential and commercial areas north of the site.
That's it?
It's pretty simple. It's a box and an antenna. I can happy to answer
All
questions.
right, no problem.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, Dennis or Kelly, actually, a utility pole is usually situated on someone's property or right-of-way. And on the site plan application, it says Mobility LLC / Paul, which is you.
Me.
Okay. There is no SBL on the application. Also, are you the owner, Paul, of Mobility?
No, I wish. No, I just
I'm
work for
asking
them.
because-
Yes.
Because as an LLC, it wasn't signed by the property owner, and I don't have an LLC paperwork filled out that I could find in the paperwork that anytime there's an LLC application before us, there's a county form that needs to be filled out. I don't see that form anywhere.
They should fill out that form. With regard to the SBL, it's probably because it is a public road, a village road, so if it's in the right-of-way, village roads don't have SBLs with the county.
Okay, but this utility pole is actually on a vacant piece of land. It's not in the middle of the road, that's why I'm,
Maria, if you look at sheet SP-1, I don't know if you have that plan. That shows the property line.
which one was it?
SP-1, it's the second one in the package.
SP-1, okay.
Right. There's the curb line, but the curb line doesn't define the roadway. The roadway is defined by the right-of-way line and the property line. And if you look, you'll see the pole, and behind the pole is a dashed line showing a property line. That represents the private property that would be to the west, I guess, yeah. And the pole is still shown within the public right-of-way. And poles typically are within the public right-of-way, even though they're behind the curb line, because it varies on the road. Many rights-of-way are 50 feet, that's typical. And most of the village roads, or many of the village roads, have 50-foot rights-of-way. So if you have a 30-foot road, which this says a 46-foot right-of-way. That's a little unusual, but it's a 46-foot right-of-way. And so there is property behind the curb line, and from this survey, it says that it's in the public right-of-way. And they would not have an SBL then.
But there still should be. I want an SBL there. It has to, I'm being
How can you have it?
picky about this, because most of these roads owned to the center of the property's owned into the center of the lane. You gotta
Some
acknowledge, you have
properties,
to acknowledge this
some
somewhere.
old properties would do that. We have issues like that around town when we look at properties that had a right-of-way that was, Mrs. O'Leary's cow walked down this way and it became a public right-of-way, but it was never dedicated to municipality. This Corporate Drive and Turner Road here, this was an improvement that was made not that long ago. And when that happened, there was a right-of-way created, and that was dedicated to the municipality after the road was constructed
Okay.
to your standards. So there is no SBL associated with it. I think the best designation you can have for it would have to be the road name. Quite frankly, it created a problem for us because I file, and I think you file in the building department by SBLs. You may do that even with your own records. There is no SBL here. We have to find another way. So it's by the street name. That's what
All
I've
right, so
done.
who's gonna mow the grass beneath the pole? Not the village, the
Well,
property owner, right?
it's the same way
sorry.
around, it's the same way around the town. The town has, everybody doesn't own to the curb line, but most of you cut your grass up to the curb line,
Yep.
and that's what happens. So people do maintain that piece of property in the front, even though they don't own it. That's typical.
And this pole is there already.
I know the pole's there already.
No, I mean, they're asking to put something on the pole.
I know that.
I know you know.
All right, so the other thing, so the SBL, property owner, LLC form. So the LLC form we're going to get, and we're gonna get a revised form that shows a signature, but says no property owner on here. That's my, this is it.
Oh,
That's, I'm saying, your application has no property owner. So who's signing this as a property owner? The village? Orange and Rockland? Who's owning this?
Mike had some comments in there about that. I mean, and that may be something they have to deal with the village on. It's, the pole is owned by the utility company.
Right?
And that is there by virtue of a blanket easement that they have to construct within the municipality. The property is owned by the village. Beyond that, I'm getting into an area that's not engineering, and I'll defer down to Kelly.
I'm gonna tell you,
This is something that Mike and I were actually
Okay.
corresponding about previously, about having to approach the village. But it is a public right-of-way, so it can be used for highway purposes. But whether or not they need to approach the village for permission to cross to the actual pole is something that we're working on, but they may need to go to the village. As far as the property owner is the village, but they should provide at least the correct information on the application, the LLC form. As much information that they can provide at this point needs to be included that has not
okay,
been.
so applicant's gonna reach out to the village board of trustees?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. That answers my questions of administrative. All right, if you're done telling us about the project, I'm gonna go to Dennis, or actually,
Yeah.
we have Mike, we have Mike. You wanna defer to Mike?
I'm going to be brief on this. I'm going to
Okay.
say that we have some things that we talked about in the waiver provisions, but Mike went through it in much greater detail.
Yeah.
And some of the things are duplicated. I don't think we disagreed on anything, so I think it'd be better to have, get the report from Mike.
Thank you. All right, Mike, you're
Great.
on.
Yep, thank you. And thanks for the feedback on the admin. Kind of an odd set of circumstances from what I'm used to dealing with. Usually we're dealing with towers or antennas on water tanks or rooftops and things like that. This is a newer technology. Mobility is not an FCC carrier. They don't provide you coverage and capacity on your phone, but rather they're an infrastructure company. In this case, their client is Sprint, PCS, one of the wireless carriers that service our area. It's a very focused node, as it's called, a small cell. Instead of having a large tower or a very high water tank or rooftop with 6, 9, or 12 antennas on it, Sprint is simply looking for one small canister antenna at the top. And the reason for that is mainly to integrate call traffic from their existing cell sites in the area, namely Mar Lane Monopole, and also up at Arden Hill. There's a tower where multiple carriers are at. And the critical area is Route 32 in the Woodbury Commons area. And they provided testimony on that regarding some network problems that Sprint has. Very busy area, especially during certain times of the year. You may be aware that T-Mobile has a similar installation inside of a building cupola near Woodbury Commons for a similar reason. So aside from shoppers and traffic, Route 17, Route 32, there's of course also the throughway. And Sprint does experience problems, and this is one solution that could help them out. It helps them manage the macro sites and the traffic. When you're mobile, which site could pick up a call, which site is overloaded. This small cell will help divert those calls to the macro sites and provide some coverage and capacity on its own. We are seeing more of this in the municipalities that we work for. Small cells are usually for one carrier, like Sprint or Verizon. There's also something called distributed antenna systems, which are these nodes on right-of-way poles or other infrastructure. You know, many times we see sets of nodes. I'm working on one up in 9W, Newburgh and Marlborough, where there's 11 nodes altogether. It's a contiguous system, pole to pole, not every consecutive pole, but you get the idea. It's very focused coverage, and it's to meet terrain issues up there as much as it is capacity and coverage from the surrounding cell sites that do exist in our area. So there is information that was provided on why this site is needed. I gave some backup on who Mobility is. I think you've seen information packets from them in the past. We looked at radio frequency emissions, as we always do. This will be compliant with radio frequency emissions. We talk in our memo about code provisions and waivers. So on the starting on the third page of our memo, we talk about a bunch of them. And maybe I could just run through those a little bit, very briefly. In general, we feel that many are appropriate and reasonable, but there could be some discussion, and maybe Kelly or other consultants could kick in with that with some comments. FCC license is usually asked for when somebody comes in front of you, like a Verizon or a Sprint. As I mentioned here, I don't think that's applicable. Mobility is an infrastructure company. Sometimes I think of them as a tower company, but with the tower laid down on its side, so antennas by the other providers could work on their system. Topographic and geomorphic study and analysis, that's really for new towers, for a very robust structural and foundation analysis that's needed, say for a 150-foot tower. That would certainly be provided, but here we're looking at an existing 45-foot wooden pole with some rather small and light equipment that's attached to it. The applicant has provided testimony that they would adhere to Orange and Rockland's characteristics, and they also have a structural certification that that pole will be able to accommodate the equipment. The antenna, a second lower relay antenna, and a box called a shroud on the side, and a power meter. That's pretty much the extent of it. They did submit an EAF form. However, they didn't submit a complete visual assessment. That's something I think the board could consider. They provided a photo simulation, and I have some photos in my tech memo that you could see. They also provided some, in that packet that I think you've seen, many different mobility installations from around the country. So in my mind, that might be a reasonable waiver, but it's visually related, so I would, of course, refer to the planning board members on that. There's a couple things on lot size setbacks. In the wireless ordinance, I think those are related, again, to a very tall tower structure, looking at fall zone, looking at property lines nearby. That's something that's possibly eligible for a waiver. There was also one about village inspection. And again, for a large tower that has the fence compound at the base, that certainly is required. Here, this is in the right-of-way. You could walk up to it. A village official would be able to literally walk up around this existing utility pole and look. However, as Kelly points out, part of that provision in the wireless code is also associated with the fee that would be involved. Should there ever be a problem and the board or the planning department needs to look at this installation, yes, they could walk up to it, but that provision maybe shouldn't be waived because you'd want to preserve and maintain the fee that might be involved with that. So that's something that I think mobility could talk to a little more, or the board could chime in on. And I guess one of the last ones, there's a couple annual certifications that are in your code, and there's also a recertification for a special use permit. Mobility agrees to those, but the one waiver request they have is for the radio frequency emissions. Given that this is a newer technology, familiar with the antenna systems, but I recommend that that not be waived. I think that is wise, as with all of your cell sites around the village. I'd recommend that that provision always stay in as part of a special use permit. I give you some background on what small cell technology is. I embedded a couple images from the drawing set. There's a cross section where you could see the existing pole.
Mike, just hold on a second.
Sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
A cross section I gave you, you could see the existing pole. There's a street light on that. That will not be changed. And you could see the equipment on the side of it in cross section. The power will be fed overhead. That's where they, mobility will link up to run their equipment. There's no generator or ground-based equipment, no trenching or road openings or anything like that. So I wanted to clarify that. I talked a little bit about aesthetic.
Mike,
Yep.
just step back to that. You're looking at page 6, correct? The cross-section?
Yes.
All right. Where the light comes below the pole, how much higher is this above the light?
Right. So
I
the,
can't read those numbers, I'm sorry.
yeah, I know, it's a small image. So the light pole is actually not at the very, the light
Light is-
fixture is not at the very top
Top.
of the 45-foot pole.
Right.
I would say that that's at about, 6 feet,
I can speak to that.
6.5 feet.
And that distance from the light pole and the secondary power to the top of the pole is required by Orange and Rockland as one of their specifications for the distance between the antenna and the secondary power. So that's where that space comes from. The 6 feet.
So this is going to be 6 feet above the arm of the light.
Yeah, there's 6 feet existing of pole already
Already
above
there.
that light.
Okay.
The canister antenna is the little thing at the very top. It's about another 2'9" in height.
So it's two, all right, it's two,
So if you line up those images on page 6, the one on the left is the existing pole, and the one on the right is proposed afterwards.
Okay.
So you could see there's a bit of pole already existing above where that street lamp is affixed to.
So we're looking at another 2.5 to 3 feet above the existing pole.
About 3 feet in all with the attachment and the antenna itself.
Okay, thank you. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Not at all. Thank you for the comment and the question. I guess the last thing I touched upon was the structural assessment. It's a Class 3 wooden utility pole. Orange and Rockland, of course, have very, they want to be very comfortable of any co-locator on their infrastructure. They have an obligation to provide power and to make sure these poles are intact and doing what they should. So they do have a set of specifications for any kind of co-locator like this. And sometimes it's their own communication, sometimes it's something from a local municipality or the county. Orange and Rockland and other utility companies certainly do accommodate some co-locations, so this isn't exactly a new concept. In some municipalities, Verizon Fios has their boxes attached, or Optimum Cablevision. So this is something akin to that. It's a little bit more of a prominent antenna on top, but you get the idea with the equipment. I conclude the memo with a few recommendations at the end, and some of them are fairly standard. I just note, I think for tonight, certainly, the things that came to mind for this board would be to talk about SECR a little bit and any kind of referrals. An excellent comment earlier from the chair on getting in front of the village board and also the county form. And I think, in my judgment at this time, if the board is inclined, I'll be happy to answer questions, but it could, in my opinion, entertain a public hearing date if you see fit about that.
Okay, thank you. Where am I gonna start? You wanna start, since I started with the other? You can start first, go ahead.
Mike, on page 2, where you talked about the code review, and you said that the small cell installations are not directly addressed in our code, is that something, I mean, as we go through different applications, sometimes things come up that aren't really addressed in our code. Is that something that we should ask, our village board to look at?
Well, I'll answer that one if you don't mind, because when we had the pre-app meeting back on, when was the meeting? August 21st?
September
September,
6th.
yeah, I'm sorry, September 6th, I'm looking at the memo. I thought we had asked Rick at that time to look into this, Kelly. I'm sure you and him are working on this, to work with the village board to come up with some kind of a addendum to our code.
We've been conversing with Mike as well for his expertise in this area.
Okay, so they are working on that because this is new technology. And the reason why I'm saying that, because I know the mayor, I spoke with the mayor about this. I'm not sure if it ever went before the village board, so I can't verify that. He is aware of this project because some of these wanted to go in Woodbury Common. And from what the mayor has told me, he was not for this.
Well, that was where I was going with that question was, I mean, if we allow this, are we setting a precedent that, like every other week, somebody else is gonna come in and we're gonna end up with these,
They could go down Route 32, they
That-
can go down to
that's-
private
yeah.
homes.
That's what I'm
Residents.
questioning.
Right, I guess two quick comments on that. Many of municipal codes for wireless technologies were written in the early 2000s. Distributed antenna systems, small cells, right away, didn't exist at that time. And there's really a lot of FCC statutes also that have come along the way. The shot clock rule, which you might remember from some wireless applications of how quick you have to act on an application and when it's determined to be complete. As I see it, this technology has been used for years, decades, in airports, inside shopping malls, indoor environments, concert halls, where populations could change and diminish very quickly. If you go into Manhattan right now, you'd be hard-pressed not to find one of these at any given intersection. There's just so much call use. People talking, people texting, people getting emails, people transmitting data, that antennas on top of buildings wouldn't work. They would just be confused. There's too many carriers. So too many users. So flash forward now, this technology is certainly coming into suburbia. It's certainly coming into the Hudson Valley. So it is something I believe is prudent for municipalities to consider. There's ideas about exemptions and exclusions of working in right-of-ways. And I think it is something that village board should be aware of. I agree.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
I'm sorry, I should have
That's okay.
mentioned that earlier. Chris, any thoughts, concerns, questions?
No, I'm good.
Robert?
Mike, could, in the future, the small cell tower be modified to become larger and more powerful, or would it be more practical to go to another utility pole and establish another one?
Well, that's a good question. You could see by their submittals and the simulations, this is very small. The design is for one provider here, which is Sprint. And there's provisions in your code, which I point out, that if there is any modification to anything shown on the simulations or the drawings, that would need to go through the appropriate building department review. Really, there is a technology that's something different than what we're hearing about tonight called distributed antenna systems, where it's an antenna, one or two of these boxes called shrouds on the side, and they could accommodate sometimes 2 or 3 carriers. And more populated places that I know about, such as in the Bronx or in Westchester County or on Long Island, there's applications that have come in for these for 20 or 30 nodes at once, with the idea that this is an alternate to a new cell tower. It's another way for the carriers to meet their FCC obligations for coverage. And of course, it's running up against confusion in the public. And more than that, legitimate concern in the public if it's not regulated and if there's no substantial review of these when they go up. So this pole here, it's clear in the applicant, they don't have anything else proposed at this time, Mobility and Sprint as their client in the Village of Woodbury at this time. It is possible that we may see something from them again or another carrier.
On that one pole or another pole?
It would have to be another pole.
Right.
Yeah,
So, I
this-
mean, this would be set as it is?
Yes.
For this one carrier,
Yeah,
yes.
for this one carrier.
Correct.
Okay.
So I don't know how many utility poles are along Turner Road,
Right.
but every other pole could have, an applicant can come in,
Mm-hmm.
AT&T, T-Mobile, we can have multiples of these. So
Right.
I'm looking at the appearance. I don't know how many people look at poles, but I
I
mean, if
do.
you, you know, yeah, I mean, poles have transformers on them, they have flags on them, they have multiple
Yeah.
things on them. And yes, I do look at poles as well as you, because I see they get busy, there's too much on them. And now that you're adding another 3 feet above a utility pole, I guess we definitely really need to get to the village board with Kelly and Rick and you, Mike, with some
Sure.
recommendations so that they can review this, because it does become an impact to the residents who live here as well. I mean, to put one like, I have a utility pole at the end of my driveway. I mean, that thing is so busy right now, another 3 feet, I mean, and there's so many utility poles along 32, I mean, are we gonna have a continuation of 10, 20, 30 utility poles being impacted? When do we say enough is enough? Because the residents are gonna start noticing these new items on poles, they're gonna
I
start questioning us.
understand, but they're also recognizing calls dropping and,
Yeah, but
you know,
the
technology
location,
issues.
this
So there's a
location,
balance, you
yeah.
gotta figure out what that
Yeah.
balance is.
But this location is basically serving Woodbury Common.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the thing at this particular site.
I think the issue you're getting at is proliferation.
Yep.
And if there's more of that, setting a precedent, you heard. There's definitely an aesthetic component of this, and I do have some recommendations at the end
Okay.
that might address that. But I'll also say every single pole would not be eligible for one of these. It would depend on the height, it would depend on a line of sight. This location is actually very good when you go up 45 feet to its height. O&R and Central Hudson, utility companies, they also have limitations. If they're providing primary power, or if there's transformers on the pole, they typically would not allow it. They wouldn't allow a pole that's eligible. And I mentioned the Route 9W example that I gave. Many of those poles didn't work, 5, 10 of them consistently, either because of topography, because of its height and trees, line of sight. They just didn't work, and they ended up putting some new poles, which is another issue in the right-of-way, or just off the right-of-way. So it's a very new technology in our area, in our part of the Hudson Valley where we live, and I think it's something that we probably will see more of. For tonight, mobility is looking just at this one node, this one location.
Okay. Anything else, Robert?
No, that's it.
All right, at this point, the board's pleasure to schedule a public hearing on this. Do you want a public hearing? Robert?
Yes.
Sandy?
I think it's wise.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
If I could just interrupt
ahead, 'cause I was gonna say
on
the
this, as far as SECR is concerned, I think that's going to impact if you decide to schedule a public hearing tonight. You can declare your intent to serve as lead agency and type this as an unlisted action. And then for that 30 days passed, I would say I wouldn't set your public hearing until, you could hold it on your December 20th meeting. It just wouldn't be your first meeting in December.
All right, I'll offer a motion to declare ourselves our intent to be lead agency on this application. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Then you need a motion to declare this an unlisted action. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have enough, if we schedule a public hearing for the 20th, first of all, is everyone going to be around on the 20th?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I guess I'll be here. All right, is this enough time to put everything together to have a public hearing, or should we
If you
wait to hear
can
from?
email me and I can give you my card, I can make sure that it goes out tomorrow. And then there'll be 30 days will have passed by your December 20th meeting.
Okay, all right, all right. So we want a public hearing for the 20th? All right, then I'll offer a motion that we have a public hearing on December 20th on this application. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll see
Thank
you
you.
on the 20th. You're welcome. I gotta get more folders. Next item on the agenda is Highland Mills Center Group. Discuss proposed 84-unit senior housing complex on vacant property located off of Route 32 near the intersection with Ford Avenue and Highland Mills. Said property is known under Village of Woodbury Tax Maps as Section 218, Block 2, Lot 7, 9 through 11 and 13. It says near the intersection with Ford Avenue. It should say the intersection of Timber Trail. Isn't that closer than Ford Avenue?
It's on the other side of the street, but we could put that in a future notice.
It should say near the intersections of Timber Trail and Ford Avenue. If we can make that correction with going forward,
Yes.
please, thank you. All right, Mr. Litko. You're on.
We were,
You have the microphone on?
yes. So the applicant has been before you, not recently, but we were hopeful that we would have an opportunity to have the petition considered and perhaps referred by the village board. So far, that's not happened. Yesterday, I did get notice that there's a minor error in the petition, so we'll be resubmitting it tomorrow to the village clerk.
Okay,
I'm optimistic, again, that we will be on an agenda of the village board for consideration, or at least some indication as to whether the board will consider it or not, which will determine whether we're slightly different or the same as your previous applicant.
okay.
So you have, we just got the memo from NPV this morning. I did have a chance to review it. There is some recommendations with respect to seeker, As I understand it, they are recommending that there be a Part 3 submitted, which I think we're pleased to do. There's 5 issues that they would like the Part 3 to address. One is the stormwater plan, one is the potential to impact the nearby wetlands and the mitigation measures that will be taken to ensure that does not happen, which we will certainly do. One is the impact on energy, which is a little bit new to me in the context of a project like this. So I think I would like to have our engineer review that and discuss it with your consultants and see whether that is something that we have to address in great detail or not. So I think it was intended for a more substantial project, but I'm not really sure. So the other, the one thing that we definitely would like to have an opportunity to consult with your traffic consultant on is the need for the traffic study. And so we'd like to come back to you with a recommendation that your traffic consultant agrees with as to the extent of the study and whatever intersections may be required to be included in that study.
Okay.
And we'll certainly provide a lighting plan. It will prevent the UFO landing site kind of thing that you see for Woodbury Commons coming over the mountain. Dark sky compliant.
All right.
So we're basically looking to get some technical consultation with your consultants and come back to you with a revised EAF.
Okay, with the revised EAF, are you going to proceed then at your own risk pending, when you go before the village board?
Yes.
Pending their determination?
We necessarily have to do that because they can't act upon the rezoning until
Okay,
you complete seeker.
all right. I just want to make sure that you're moving forward.
It's our desire to keep
Okay.
moving forward. We, again, we're going to do a Part 3. We're going to consult with your technical folks on those technical points. It should be in the Part 3 to make sure it's complete. And
Okay.
it's something that will be suitable for you to take seeker action on.
Okay. Before we go any further, Sandy, your question to me, which I can't find the email, right, the note for me. We declared this on August 2nd as a unlisted action. And you're saying that in the paperwork,
The notice of intent
Yeah,
made
the
it a
notice
type
had
one.
it type
That's-
1.
It's fine, it doesn't need to be renoticed.
Okay.
we're good? All right. All right, and with that, the notice concerning lead agency, that was sent out August 22nd, and we got a response from the New York State DOT, consents that the Village of Woodbury Planning Board serve as lead agency in this application. We got a response that was stamped in September 27th from David Church, Orange County Department of Planning Commissioner. They're in receipt of our request. Our office has no interest in becoming the lead agency on this project, but would like the opportunity to review any additional secret information that is provided by the applicant going in the future. So those are the only 2 responses we got back on the lead agency. So with that being said, I guess we should declare ourselves lead agency?
Can I have a motion to assume lead agency
Assume it.
status?
Thank you, that's it. I guess I'll offer a motion that we declare ourselves and assume lead agency on this application.
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so lead agency, boom, done. Okay, next step. I guess we're going to go through, all right, you mentioned about what you need to submit to the village board. I don't have to review that. This was your request to postpone. Dennis, you just have a one-page, good night, Mike.
Yeah, there wasn't really a new plan to review. So Stu's memo covered the history of the application. There was no reason to repeat that. The only thing we had since that time was a revised EAF, and that seemed to comply with the comments at least that we had previously. So there's nothing further until they, as George said, they're trying to get some feedback from the Village Board of Trustees on whether they're going to entertain this or not.
Okay, thank you. Stu, are you taking this, or is Jonathan? Or
Well,
both
I
of
can
you?
take it for now.
All right.
Call in the reserves.
For the record, before I jump into, for the record, we need to reach out to Phil Greeley and John Collins for this
Oh, yeah.
application as traffic consultants. Dennis or Gail, can you make sure that Maria contacts them on this application? That's my mistake, I forgot to request them on this, so that they can be sent the copies of all information that we have, they can electronically email them to them, all right?
We'll do it, I'll let them know that George wants to speak to them about that.
Thank you. All right, now you're on, Stu.
Well, I think things have been pretty well covered. George had outlined the things that we had indicated to the board that we thought you needed to help you get through the seeker process, and the traffic, the wetland protection, the overall drainage plan, and the level of detail. I'll leave to Dennis. I'm not sure, I don't know if we need a SWIP at this point, because we're dealing with a zoning matter. But we need drainage, and then we can give you a fuller memo once we have that Part 3 filled out, and the studies have come in, and then you could advise the village board. And as George says, the village board hasn't indicated one way or another yet whether they're going to entertain this, but they're doing it at their own risk. So that's, I think, as far as we can go tonight.
Okay. Kelly?
I have nothing further to add to that. But if they at all want to have us involved in any of those consultant meetings, we're certainly available.
All right, so, let me just go to the board. Chris, any thoughts, concerns, questions for this application? No. Robert?
No.
Sandy?
Not until they come back from the village board.
Okay. All right, so we got the process going with SECRA, with lead agency. So now you just have to come back to us once the village board makes a decision, and in the meantime, you're gonna reach out to our traffic consultant, we'll reach out to you, and then we'll move on.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Maria, who's going to contact Phil? I missed,
Dennis.
Dennis will
Dennis
contact
is
Phil.
gonna take care of the traffic consultant
Okay.
for me. Gail, you're off the hook. Dennis will correspond with Maria and Phil and John on that one. Anything else I'm missing?
Just depending upon the discussions among the technical consultants, there may be opportunity for us to appear in December. I'm not sure which meeting, but if we could,
All
we'd
right.
like to.
I don't know which meeting yet because we have other pending items that are coming in, so I've got to juggle everything. We're getting a little busier right before the holidays, so I'll do my best. I'll work with Dennis to see what our schedule looks like.
The main purpose of that would be if there is traffic stuff that the board needs to confirm, we'd like to make sure that's all set before anybody starts studying something.
It would not be a public hearing, so it would be at the call of the chair, so we
Yeah.
can make that determination, or you can make that determination, Maria, depending upon what we have, what materials we have, and making sure they're timely in the submission so that the board has time to review them and they're
Right.
on the public record.
Yeah. Being that there's a holiday coming up next week, I doubt you're going to be on the December 6th meeting. All right?
Yep.
And we'll go from there, see
Great.
how we get everything.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? You're good? All right, consultants, anything that we need for the board? Board members, any thoughts, concerns, questions?
No.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
Well, before we all take a vote, I just want to wish everyone a good holiday next weekend with Thanksgiving. Just keep in mind all those that are abroad, serving the country. And just keep in mind, just keep special thoughts for what's happening with the Monroe Woodbury School District, with the tragedy that has occurred early this morning. So just just be mindful of everybody. And with that, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.